She was Hollywood's angel, elegant, innocent, untouchable. But in 1954, Audrey Hepburn fell in love with a married man, and the scandal nearly destroyed everything she'd built. The studio tried to bury it, the press tried to expose it, and Audrey had to choose between her heart and her career. This is the forbidden romance they never wanted you to know about. Chapter 1. The girl who survived the war. Before Audrey Hepburn became Hollywood's princess, she was a starving child in Nazi-occupied Holland. Born in 1929 to a Dutch baroness and a British banker, Audrey seemed destined for privilege. But World War II shattered that illusion. Her father abandoned the family when she was 6, a betrayal that haunted her forever. By the time she was a teenager, the Nazis had occupied the Netherlands. Food was scarce. Her family hid resistance fighters in their home. Audrey danced in secret performances to raise money for the underground movement. During the brutal hunger winter of 1944-45, Audrey survived on tulip bulbs and whatever scraps she could find. She developed severe malnutrition that would affect her health for the rest of her life. She watched friends and family members executed. She learned that survival sometimes meant silence, secrecy, and sacrifice. When the war ended, Audrey was 16 years old and weighed less than 90 pounds. But she'd learned something crucial: how to hide pain behind a beautiful smile. That skill would serve her well in Hollywood and nearly destroy her when she finally let someone see the real woman underneath. By 1951, she'd moved to London, studying ballet and taking small acting roles. Then a French novelist saw her and insisted she audition for his next film. The movie was Roman Holiday. The novelist was Colette, and Audrey Hepburn was about to become a star. Chapter 2. The overnight sensation. Roman Holiday made Audrey Hepburn an overnight sensation in 1953. She played a princess who escapes her royal duties for one day of freedom in Rome. The performance was magical, innocent, yet knowing, playful yet melancholic. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress at 24 years old. Suddenly, the skinny girl who'd eaten tulip bulbs to survive was Hollywood's new darling. But Audrey was different from other stars. She wasn't sultry like Marilyn Monroe or dramatic like Elizabeth Taylor. She was elegant, refined, and most importantly to the studios, she seemed pure. Paramount Pictures built her image carefully. Audrey was the girl next door who happened to look like a princess. She wore Givenchy gowns but maintained a down-to-earth persona. She was beautiful but approachable, talented but humble, the perfect star for 1950s America, which craved wholesomeness after the scandals of the previous decade. But there was a problem. Audrey's personal life didn't match her public image, and when she fell in love with the wrong man, everything the studio had built threatened to collapse. In 1953, she'd married actor Mel Ferreira, Hollywood veteran 12 years her senior. The marriage looked perfect on paper, but those close to Audrey knew the truth. Mel was controlling, jealous, and increasingly threatened by his wife's success. Within months, Audrey was miserable. Chapter 3. The Man She Wasn't Supposed to Love. In 1954, Audrey was cast in Sabrina, directed by Billy Wilder. She'd play a chauffeur's daughter who falls in love with a wealthy playboy. Her co-stars were Humphrey Bogart and William Holden, two of Hollywood's biggest names. Bogart was grumpy and resentful, angry that Audrey had been cast instead of his wife, Lauren Bacall. But William Holden fell in love with Audrey the moment he saw her. William Holden was 42 years old, married to actress Brenda Marshall, with 3 children. He was also one of Hollywood's most notorious drinkers and womanizers. On paper, he was everything Audrey should have avoided, but on the set of Sabrina, something ignited between them that neither could control. Holden was charming, self-deprecating, and genuinely kind to Audrey. He made her laugh. He listened when she talked about her unhappy marriage. He saw past the princess image to the wounded girl underneath. And Audrey, trapped in a controlling marriage, exhausted from maintaining her perfect image, finally felt seen. The affair began quietly. Stolen moments between takes, long conversations in Holden's dressing room, then late-night meetings at his rented house in Beverly Hills. Hollywood whispered, but no one dared report it. Audrey Hepburn having an affair? Impossible. The public would never believe it. Chapter 4. The Secret That Couldn't Stay Hidden in 4 months. Audrey and William Holden conducted their romance in secret. Mel Ferrer suspected but couldn't prove anything. The studio knew but actively covered it up. Audrey's wholesome image was too valuable to risk. Holden told Audrey he was unhappy in his marriage. He said he'd leave his wife, He promised they could build a life together. Audrey, for the first time since the war, allowed herself to hope for real happiness. But there was something Holden hadn't told her. Years earlier, after his third child was born, he'd had a vasectomy. He couldn't have more children, and he knew Audrey desperately wanted to be a mother. She'd spoken about it constantly on set, but he was too afraid of losing her to tell the truth. When Audrey finally discovered the truth, she was devastated, not because Holden couldn't have children, but because he'd lied. For months, while promising her a future, he'd been hiding something he knew would break her heart. The relationship ended abruptly in late 1954. Audrey threw herself into work, filming War and Peace in Italy. Holden spiraled into heavier drinking, and the studio breathed a sigh of relief. The affair had ended before the press could turn it into a scandal. But Audrey never fully recovered. Friends said something in her broke that year, a final loss of innocence that even the war hadn't taken. Chapter 5. The studio's damage seal. Paramount Pictures went into full damage control mode. They couldn't let even a whisper of the affair reach the public. Audrey's image as America's princess was too valuable. Sabrina was heading toward massive box office success. Any scandal could ruin everything. Studio publicists planted stories about Audrey's happy marriage to Mel. They arranged public appearances where the couple looked loving and united. They sent out press releases about Audrey's charity work, her humility, her devotion to family. Meanwhile, they threatened William Holden. If he spoke about the affair, his career would be destroyed. His wife would divorce him publicly, taking everything. The studio had enough dirt on his drinking and other affairs to bury him, so Holden stayed silent, drank more, and watched the woman he loved pretend their relationship had never existed. Gossip columnists like Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons knew something had happened on the Sabrina set. They'd heard rumors, seen knowing looks, but without proof. They couldn't print anything, and Paramount made sure they never found proof. Photos from the set were carefully curated. Any images showing Audrey and Holden looking too intimate were destroyed. Interview questions about her co-stars were Audrey herself was coached on how to deflect any personal questions with grace and charm. Chapter 6. The marriage that was already by Roque and Audrey returned to her marriage with Mel Ferrer, but it was a shell. Mel knew about Holden, everyone in Hollywood knew, but divorce wasn't an option, not for America's princess, so they maintained the facade. Mel became increasingly controlling. He started managing Audrey's career, choosing her roles, negotiating her contracts. Friends said he was trying to diminish hurt, to make himself seem more important by making her smaller. Audrey desperately wanted children. After the heartbreak with Holden, motherhood became her obsession, the one thing that might fill the emptiness inside her. She became pregnant in 1955, but suffered a devastating miscarriage. Then another, in 1957. Each loss broke her a little more. The studio watched nervously. A depressed Audrey was bad for business. They needed her smiling, elegant, perfect, so they pushed her into more films. Funny Face, Love in the Afternoon, The Nun's Story. Each performance was brilliant. Each one required Audrey to hide more of herself behind the image. In 1960, she finally gave birth to a son, Sean. For a while, motherhood gave her the happiness she'd been seeking, but her marriage to Mel was beyond repair. They divorced in 1968, 14 years of pretending finally over. Chapter 7. When their paths crossed, AGA in 1964, Audrey and William Holden were cast together again in Paris when it sizzles. 10 years had passed since Sabrina, 10 years since their affair ended. The studio thought enough time had passed. They were wrong. The chemistry was still there. The pain was still there. But now they were different people, both damaged by the years between. Holden's drinking had gotten worse. Audrey was trapped in her unhappy marriage and desperate to maintain her image. Filming was torture. They could barely look at each other. When they had to perform romantic scenes, the tension was unbearable. Director Richard Quine later said it was the most uncomfortable set he'd ever worked on. They were in love, he said, and they hated themselves for it. The film was a disaster both critically and commercially. Audiences could sense something was wrong. The magic that had made Sabrina sparkle was gone, replaced by something sad and desperate. After filming wrapped, Audrey and Holden never worked together again. They'd see each other occasionally at Hollywood events, polite, distant, carrying the weight of what could have been. Holden continued drinking until it killed him in 1981. Audrey never spoke publicly about their relationship, not once. Chapter 8. The cost of PRFCTON. By the late 1960s, Audrey Hepburn was exhausted. 20 years of maintaining a perfect image, 20 years of hiding her pain, 20 years of being what everyone else needed her to be. She started turning down roles. She wanted to focus on being a mother, but the real reason was simply she couldn't pretend anymore. The gap between the elegant princess everyone saw and the wounded woman she actually was had grown too wide. Rehook 8 friends from that era describe Audrey as deeply lonely. She'd married again in 1969 to Italian psychiatrist Andrea Dotti, but that marriage was troubled too. Dotti was unfaithful. Audrey was unhappy. The pattern repeated. She retreated from Hollywood almost completely in the 1970s. A few select roles. Mostly, she lived in Switzerland with her sons, gardening and trying to find peace. The studio that had once controlled every aspect of her image no longer had power over her. But the damage was done. The girl who'd survived the Nazi occupation had survived Hollywood too, but barely. And the price had been giving up the one man who'd truly seen her, because loving him would have destroyed the image that everyone demanded she maintain. Chapter 9. The truth. She finally 1989, near the end of her life, Audrey Hepburn gave a rare interview where she spoke more honestly than ever before. She talked about the pressure of fame, the loneliness of being idealized, the cost of perfection. When asked about her greatest regret, she hesitated. Then she said, "I wish I'd been braver. I wish I'd chosen happiness over image. But I was young, and I was scared, and I let other people make my decisions." Rehook 9. She never mentioned William Holden by name, but everyone who knew her understood what she meant. The forbidden romance that almost destroyed her career was also the one that might have saved her, if she'd been brave enough to choose it. In her final years, Audrey dedicated herself to UNICEF, working with children in the world's most desperate places. Friends said she was trying to save the children she couldn't save during the war, but maybe she was also trying to save the girl she'd been the one who'd learned to hide pain behind a beautiful smile. She died in 1993 at 63 from colon cancer. The world mourned the loss of an icon, but those who truly knew her mourned the loss of the woman behind the icon, the woman who'd given up her own happiness to maintain an image that was never real. Chapter 10. The legacy of a forbidden love. Audrey Hepburn is remembered as one of Hollywood's greatest stars. Elegant, timeless, perfect, exactly the image the studio created all those years ago. But the truth is more complicated. Audrey was a survivor who'd endured war, starvation, abandonment, and heartbreak. She was a woman who fell in love with the wrong man and paid for it by living a lie for the rest of her career. Rehook 10. The affair with William Holden wasn't just a scandal the studio buried. It was a turning point the moment Audrey Hepburn had to choose between being herself and being the image everyone demanded. She chose the image, and it cost her everything. In recent years, biographers have uncovered letters between Audrey and Holden written after their affair ended, hidden for decades. In them, Audrey writes about regret, about wondering what life would have been like if she'd been brave enough to choose love over career. Holden's letters are heartbreaking, filled with apologies, self-loathing, and the confession that losing Audrey was the biggest mistake of his life. The studio that forced them apart is long gone. The gossip columnists who would have destroyed them are dead. The 1950s morality that made their love forbidden seems absurd now, but the damage remains, documented in those letters to people who loved each other, destroyed by an industry that valued image over humanity. Final cliffhanger. In 1981, William Holden died alone in his Santa Monica apartment. He'd been drinking heavily and fell, hitting his head. He bled to death over several days before anyone found him. Tragic, lonely, a Hollywood ending. But here's what wasn't reported at the time. When police inventoried Holden's belongings, they found a locked box in his bedroom safe. Inside were dozens of photographs of Audrey Hepburn, publicity stills from Sabrina, candid shots from the set, personal photos that were never meant to be public. There was also a letter, sealed in an envelope, with Audrey's name written on the front. The envelope had never been opened. Holden had written it, but never sent it. Police turned it over to Holden's estate lawyer, who was instructed to deliver it to Audrey privately. Did Audrey ever receive that letter? What did it say? Her sons have never confirmed whether it reached her. Audrey never spoke about it. She died 12 years after Holden, taking the answer to her grave. But friends who saw Audrey in the months after Holden's death said she seemed to frown quieter, more withdrawn. She'd started the UNICEF work that would define her final years. Some interpreted it as penance. Others saw it as purpose. One close friend later said, it was like she'd finally made peace with something. Or maybe she'd finally accepted that some things can never be forgiven, not by others, but by yourself. There's a scene in Sabrina where Audrey's character says, I have learned how to live, how to be in the world and of the world, and not just to stand aside and watch. It was the role that brought her and Holden together, the role that started everything. In real life, Audrey spent 50 years standing aside and watching the woman she could have been if she'd been brave enough to choose love over image, watching the life she gave up to maintain a perfect reputation, watching the world celebrate an icon while the real woman slowly disappeared behind it. The forbidden romance didn't destroy Audrey Hepburn's career. The studio made sure of that, but it destroyed something more important, her belief that happiness was possible, that love could be chosen, that she deserved more than the cage Hollywood built around her. She survived the Nazis, she survived starvation, she survived Hollywood, but she never survived the choice she made in 1954, when she walked away from the one man who truly saw her, because everyone else needed her to be perfect. The question remains, what was in William Holden's final letter? An apology, a confession, a declaration of love that came 30 years too late? We'll never know. Like so many Hollywood secrets, it died with the people who lived it. But somewhere in an estate archive, a private collection, or perhaps destroyed by Audrey herself, that letter exists, or existed, and in it might be the answer to the question Audrey Hepburn spent her entire life trying to escape. What happens when you choose image over love? When you sacrifice yourself to maintain perfection, you become immortal. You become an icon. You become everything the world wanted you to be, and you spend the rest of your life wondering who you might have been if you'd just been brave enough to be yourself.